Our next story is about the news. We report it, you consume it. That's been the equation for decades. But now people are turning away from the news. Apparently, they find it boring and depressing. Says who? A new study. It was conducted by the Oxford University. More than 90,000 adults were surveyed from 47 countries, so a fairly good sample size. And what did they find? 39% people actively avoid the news. 39%, this number was just 29% back in 2017. So it's risen by 10% in 6 years. Let's look at some other numbers as well. 46% people are extremely interested in the news. This number was 63% in 2017. So the big picture is quite clear. More people are turning away from the news. The question is why? Apparently it's too boring, relentless and depressing. Now at the outset, let me say this. We understand the sentiment. We also respect the feedback. But tonight, we are putting these numbers in context. Basically, telling our side of the story. We can't deny that news is depressing. There are two major wars in the world. Wealth inequality is rising, food insecurity is surging, and civil wars are hurting daily lives. That is not a propaganda spin. That is the reality of our planet. Yes, the pictures and numbers are depressing. But what else should the news media do? Should we not report all this? Well, the culprits would love that. Israel would love it if the media stopped covering the war in Gaza. No reportage, no outrage. China would love it if we stopped talking about Xinjiang. The US would love it if we don't talk about Libya or Afghanistan. But that is not the solution. If the news is depressing, it's a reflection of our world. Blaming or challenging or cancelling the messenger won't help. Now we come to the boring part of it. Is news really that boring? The report says it is. Apparently, there is too much politics in the news, and we agree to some extent. News media does focus too much on politicians. It becomes a who said what situation. Maybe other genres can be explored, like emerging technologies or feel-good stories or even science and health. Things that trigger conversations and impact our lives. Having said that, you cannot eliminate politics. And that's where leaders also matter. How do you make an 81-year-old president interesting? How do you make parliamentary logjam less boring? Perhaps the answer lies in packaging. News has not really changed since the 2000s. The same old format, the same old style of graphics, and the same old stories. Compare that to other forms of media, like music or movies. The packaging has improved a lot more, and there's a reason why. The money. News media is not exactly a money spinner. Let's look at the US market, which is the biggest in the world. They have lost 1/3 of their newspapers since 2005. 1/3. Last year, more than 2 newspapers shut down every week. And shutdowns also mean layoffs. America has lost 2/3 of its newspaper journalists since the year 2005. What explains this? A big reason is dipping advertisement revenue. Just look at the New York Times. Their ad revenue fell 8.4% last year. And still the New York Times managed to make some profit. But the Washington Post did not. They lost around $100 million. Same with television channels. CNN lost 39% of their ad revenue in the first half of 2023. Fox News lost 36% of their ad revenue. So my point is quite simple. Even the biggest media companies are struggling the world over. If money doesn't come from ads, where will it come from? Paid subscriptions are one option, but how many of you pay for news? According to the same survey, very few people. Only 17% people paid for their news. It's barely changed from the last survey. 55% people say they will not pay for news. Only 2% will pay the actual subscription amount. Most others want steep discounts. So where will expansion come from? Where will new ideas come from? You pay for Netflix. You pay for Amazon. Yet very few of you want to pay for the news. Unless this changes, there is no scope to expand, to try new things. So while we take the feedback from the viewer, we also have a request. Don't avoid the news. Tell us how to make it better. Which stories do you want to see? How do you want to see them? And how much will you pay for them? Because news cannot be a one-way street.